Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. The air in the conference room was suffocating, thick with tension and the stale scent of burnt coffee from the break room just down the hall. The blinds were half drawn, casting sharp lines of sunlight across the oval-shaped table where the entire sales team sat. Confused, silent, expectant. Phones buzzed quietly under the table. No one dared look up, except me and him. Gregory Carter, the regional manager, leaned back in his chair like he was settling into a throne, fingers steepled under his chin, a smug grin dancing beneath his salt and pepper beard. His voice sliced through the silence with cold precision. "James, you know why we're here." No, I didn't. I'd been called into the meeting with zero context. No agenda, no heads up. Just a curt, "Everyone, conference room, now." I sat forward slowly, ignoring the eyes drilling into me from all sides. "Actually, I don't," I replied calmly, "but I'm sure you'll enlighten me." Carter chuckled and reached for a folder sitting beside him, thick and sealed. He dropped it in front of me like a judge handing down a sentence. "This is your termination, effective immediately." A few audible gasps escaped around the table. Chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably. I blinked once, then twice. "Termination?" I repeated, trying to maintain composure. "On what grounds?" Carter tilted his head like I'd just asked something hilariously naive. "James, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Consider this, mutual separation. Things just aren't working out." "Not working out?" I leaned forward, jaw tightening. "I'm leading the region in closed accounts. I brought in the Duval Tech merger. I've personally onboarded half the new hires here." He shrugged. "Sometimes it's not about numbers. It's about fit, and you don't fit." The word fit echoed in my head like a dull hammer. The same reason they'd used when firing Darren, the only other black rep in the office. The same vague excuse they gave when talented people mysteriously weren't a good culture match. I clenched my fists under the table. He wasn't firing me because of performance. He was firing me because I didn't kiss up to him, because I worked harder and made him look lazy, because I challenged him, respectfully but firmly, on unethical client billing practices last month. Practices I had quietly documented, and now this. Public humiliation. He wanted to make an example of me. "You'll be escorted out in 5 minutes, he added. "HR will be in touch." Escorted. Like I was a criminal. My coworkers stared at me but said nothing. No one stood up. No one asked questions. I looked at Sophia, the girl I trained 3 months ago. She dropped her eyes. Then at Eli, the rep who'd once told me I was the best mentor he'd ever had. He tapped his phone nervously. "Not even a warning?" I asked one last time. Carter's smile widened. "You'll land on your feet. I'm sure someone will appreciate your skill set." I stood slowly, lifting the folder off the table and tucking it under my arm. The room stayed silent, and then I said something that made his smile twitch. "Yeah," I nodded. "I'm sure they will." He didn't know what that meant, not yet. But he would. Why was James really fired if he was the top performer? The drive back to my apartment was a blur. City lights smeared against the windshield, car horns bled into the background like white noise, and my reflection in the rearview mirror looked unfamiliar. Calm, but coiled tight. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't even call anyone. Instead, I opened the locked drawer of my desk when I got home, pulled out an old leather notebook, and scribbled a single sentence across the next blank page. It started. 3 months ago, I walked into that company as James Ellis Carter, a name that meant nothing to anyone in that office. I left off the junior, I left off the prestigious degree. I even forged a mediocre resume. Why? Because I didn't want the CEO's son treatment. I didn't want fake promotions or corporate bootlickers pretending I was a genius because of my last name. I wanted to know the truth, how our company really worked from the inside. Dad didn't approve, of course. "You don't have to prove yourself like this," he told me. But I did, because if I was going to run Carter and Maddox one day, I had to understand what they wouldn't show me in boardrooms. So I went undercover. I applied through a temp agency under a false identity, changed my hair, dropped the suits, and took a job in sales at the regional level, the grunt level. No one recognized me. Not surprising, really. Most of them had only seen my father on corporate newsletters or video conferences. He kept our family private. The name Carter didn't scream royalty in the business world. Not yet. And I kept it that way until Carter, Gregory Carter, no relation, decided to make an enemy of me. In those 3 months, I kept my head down and absorbed everything. I watched Carter siphon marketing budgets to private consultants who turned out to be his niece and her 2-person firm run out of a WeWork. I watched him take credit for regional successes he had no hand in and pit high-performing team members against each other for sport. I kept quiet when he encouraged a toxic culture where the loudest voice won and the rest of us were expected to applaud from the sidelines. But the worst part, he wasn't just a bad boss. He was comfortable being one. He thought no one was watching, but I was. And I kept everything. Invoices, voice memos, Slack screenshots, meeting recordings, all carefully cataloged in the encrypted drive hidden behind a fake file folder called Q1 Budget Forecasts. I didn't plan on being fired. Not yet, but now. Now he'd kicked the hornet's nest, and soon he'd learn. He hadn't fired a sales rep. He'd fired the man who could ruin him. Why did James go undercover in his own father's company? What was he truly looking for? The morning after I got fired, I didn't sleep in. I didn't lie in bed, wallowing in bitterness or reliving every humiliating second of the firing. I woke up at 5 a.m., same as always. I brewed the same black coffee, didn't add sugar, didn't need it. I opened my laptop and started reviewing the folder I hoped I'd never need to open, Carter Region Fraud Ops. Labeled plainly, stored offline, backed up twice. Every receipt, every leaked memo, every conversation I'd secretly recorded. I stared at the desktop for a long moment before double-clicking the folder. It felt different now. When I was gathering it, it felt like research, due diligence, a quiet insurance policy. Now it was fuel. 2 hours later, I was standing in the driveway of a house most employees didn't know existed. My family's home, the real home, not the one in the company brochures or Forbes lifestyle pieces. The one tucked behind old oaks in upstate Connecticut, with stone walls and private security, where Carter and Maddox was born on the second floor of a cramped study. The front door opened before I even knocked. "James?" My father's voice carried surprise and concern in equal measure. "What's wrong?" I didn't say a word, just held up the sealed folder labeled Termination, James Carter. His eyes scanned the front, his jaw clenched, the way it always did when something didn't sit right. "Come inside," he said, stepping aside. We sat in his study, the one that still smelled like old leather and cedar. I passed him a flash drive. "What is this?" he asked, holding it up. "Proof." I leaned back. That Gregory Carter isn't just incompetent. He's corrupt, possibly criminally. His expression changed, calm to alert, the CEO mask sliding over his features. the one that turned boardrooms silent. Walk me through it. Start from the beginning. And I did. For the next hour, I laid everything out. How Carter created ghost vendor accounts and funneled money to fake firms. How employee commissions were manipulated to redirect bonuses to insiders. How 2 female employees had quietly left the company after being denied promotions, and one of them mysteriously signing an NDA. How I had recorded him talking about cleaning house of anyone who didn't play the game. I watched my father process each piece like a war general, assessing enemy movement. He fired you because you challenged him. He fired me because I saw too much, and because he had no idea who I was. My father turned slowly in his chair. And what if he had known? Then he would have kissed my shoes and doubled my salary. That got a smirk out of him. But I wanted the truth, Dad, I said. Not the version they give to the CEO's son. The real truth. What our company has become at the lower levels. He turned the flash drive over in his hand again. Do you have more? I nodded. Every document, every name, every password, and a full spreadsheet cross-referencing every dime that went missing from the department budgets over the last 6 months. He leaned forward. We go to the board. I paused. Are you sure we can trust them? Silence. That silence said more than words ever could. Will the board believe James's findings, or are some of them involved? The Carter and Maddox annual shareholders conference wasn't just a meeting, it was the event. A lavish affair held at the downtown Hilton Grand Ballroom, decked in deep navy banners bearing the company crest. Spotlights flashed, cameras rolled, suits and power ties flooded every corner, and the air was a cocktail of polished ambition and greed disguised as confidence. On stage, a massive LED screen displayed the words, Carter and Maddox, building the future together. That slogan would taste like ash by the end of the night. Backstage, I stood with my father and 3 key board members. Those we had quietly vetted and confirmed weren't in Carter's pocket. My father's face was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. I've been ready since the day he smiled while kicking me out. We walked through the black curtains just as Gregory Carter's voice boomed from center stage. And with our latest quarterly performance, I'd like to personally thank the executive team, without whom none of this growth would be possible. He paused for applause. I stepped into the light. The applause faltered. People turned. Eyes blinked. Murmurs started to ripple. Ladies and gentlemen, my father said, standing beside me, we'll be pausing this presentation for a special announcement. Gregory froze. James, he said slowly, eyes narrowing. What the hell is this? I stepped forward, calm and clear. This is the truth. The lights dimmed and the LED screen flickered. Suddenly, a slideshow began, except this wasn't a company promo. Slide after slide showed real data, falsified vendor invoices, redirected payments, a breakdown of Carter's fake consultant firm, secret payouts traced to dummy bank accounts. Faces in the crowd turned pale, phones came out, some gasped aloud. A new slide appeared, an audio waveform. I looked right at Carter. Should I play the clip where you said, I'll bury anyone who threatens my bonuses, even if I have to fake a firing? No, this is, he stumbled, red-faced. This is a setup. I agree, I said. You set me up. You just didn't know I'm the son of the man standing next to me. A second wave of gasps. Silence fell like a guillotine. Carter's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Gregory Carter, my father said, stepping forward with the company's general counsel at his side. You are hereby suspended from your position, pending a full internal and legal investigation, effective immediately. Security appeared at the stage edge. Gregory backed away instinctively, wild-eyed. You can't do this. You need me. I made this company millions." "You stole from it," I said, my voice level, "and you used your power to silence, manipulate, and destroy careers, including mine." He lunged toward me. Security stepped in. The room erupted into flashes and shouting. Phones captured every second. Someone whispered, "This is going viral." And then it happened. One final blow, the last slide loaded. Photo evidence of a confidential NDA signed by a former employee after an HR complaint was buried. Carter stopped resisting, his face drained of blood. "I told you," I said, stepping in front of the crowd. "This company deserves better. Every person sitting here deserved better, and I'm going to make sure they get it." Will James take over his father's company now? Or will his decision surprise everyone? 3 weeks after the reveal, the world had changed. Not just for Gregory Carter, who now sat under federal investigation, his name smeared across every financial news outlet in the country. Not just for Carter and Maddox, whose stock took a dip, but then began a slow, steady climb once the company made a public commitment to transparency. But for me, James Carter, the man once humiliated and cast out in a room full of indifferent co-workers, I stood in the center of the chaos I had helped orchestrate. And for the first time, I felt peace. I didn't return to the company as a victim. I didn't come crawling back with demands or bitterness. I walked into that headquarters through the front door this time, no disguise, no temp badge. I wore the Carter name with pride and purpose. The lobby buzzed with curiosity. Whispers flew from cubicle to cubicle like wildfire. "Is that him?" "That's the guy Carter fired." "Wait, he's the CEO's son." They didn't know whether to salute or shrink. I walked straight to the executive floor, the top floor, the one Gregory once called his kingdom. And this time, my name was on the glass door. Vice President Strategic Reform, James Ellis Carter. I didn't ask for the position. I didn't need a title. But my father offered me one with real weight, not for show, not for legacy, but because of what I proved, that I understood how the company worked from the bottom up, not just the top down. Still, I made one condition before accepting. The company would establish an internal ethics division, led not by executives but by employees from the ground floor, real people, the kind who knew what it felt like to be overlooked, talked over, and shut out. People like I used to be. The first team I hired, 4 former employees who had been pushed out under Gregory's reign. 2 had signed NDAs, but with new legal protections and support. They returned, not as victims, but as leaders. And that old sales team, the ones who laughed when I was fired, some stayed, some didn't. But now every single department head had to go through mandatory leadership evaluations, and some were removed. Respect had become policy, not privilege. The media tried to spin it into a fairy tale. CEO's son goes undercover, exposes corruption, rebuilds empire. They called it bold, strategic, even cinematic. But to me, it wasn't about headlines. It was about the people I'd worked beside day in and day out. The woman in payroll who couldn't get a chair that didn't squeak. The man in IT who hadn't been promoted in 7 years. It was for the ones who never got invited to the golf outings or the rooftop brunches. People who deserved to be seen. And they saw me now. That Friday, I hosted a company-wide town hall. No suits, no scripts, just coffee, pastries, and questions. I stood on a small platform holding nothing but a mic. "I was one of you not long ago," I said, scanning the crowd. I took the 6 a.m. train. I shared a desk. I heard the jokes. I saw the favoritism. And I saw what happens when no one speaks up. I paused. Let the silence breathe. I'm here now to make sure this company never needs a secret identity to see the truth again. Applause started slow, then rolled through the room like thunder. Not polite, not forced, earned. Later that night, standing on the rooftop that once hosted only executives and high-end clients, I looked out at the skyline. My father stood beside me, arms crossed. "You did it," he said. "You took down a giant and built something better." "I didn't build it," I said. "They did. I just listened." He nodded, quiet, then smiled. "One day this will all be yours." I looked at the lights below. Not yet. I've still got work to do down there. Will James eventually take over as CEO or forge a new path beyond the company? Spring rolled into summer. Under new leadership, Carter and Maddox shed its skin. The headlines moved on. The scandal faded from trending pages, but inside the building, the real change quietly took root. Old office walls were replaced with open forums. Executives now spent 1 day a week working from the floor. No titles, no special treatment. The ethics circle, once a radical proposal, became the company's most respected department. And me? I never forgot how it all began, with a pink slip and a handshake from a man who thought he was untouchable. 6 months later, a plaque hung outside my office now, not just a name. "Let your work speak louder than your name, JEC. The initials weren't just mine. They stood for every person who had ever been dismissed, ignored, or overlooked. It was for the ones who showed up early, stayed late, and never got thanked. And people noticed. I began receiving letters. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Stories from employees across the country. Some I'd never met. One line from a letter stuck with me. "You reminded me that I wasn't invisible." That fall, I walked through the same break room where I once ate alone. This time, I wasn't wearing a visitor badge. I wasn't a ghost. I wasn't someone just filling in for the day. A younger intern stopped me, nervously holding a tablet. "Mr. Carter?" he asked, eyes wide. I mean, James, can I ask, how did you do it?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The same hunger I once carried stared back at me. "I didn't do it alone," I said. "I paid attention. I stayed quiet long enough to hear what others were too afraid to say." He nodded, and I could see it meant something. "You'll do more than survive here," I added. "You'll build. Just promise me, when it's your turn, listen." 1 year later, Gregory Carter sat in a courtroom surrounded by silence. He pled guilty. Embezzlement, fraud, harassment cover-ups. He exchanged tailored suits for an orange jumpsuit, power lunches for scheduled meals, luxury silence for a metal door that locked at 9 p.m. sharp. When asked in an interview if I felt revenge was satisfying, I simply said number justice was. Revenge is personal. Justice heals more than just one person. On the company's 40th anniversary, I stood on the main stage with my father. He handed me a document in front of the board, the press, and over 4,000 employees watching via live stream. James Ellis Carter, CEO. I didn't tear up until I looked into the crowd and saw the janitor from my first week on the floor, the one who always greeted me with a nod, never asking questions, just treating me like a person. He stood and clapped first, and suddenly, everyone stood. Thunderous applause filled the hall, not for a promotion, not for a name, but for a journey. The journey of a man who had once been fired in shame, who returned to fix a broken empire, who remembered the names of the invisible, who proved that sometimes the quietest man in the room holds the loudest truth. In the past, I was dismissed from a humiliating job. Today, I return, not just to buy back the company, but to rewrite what it stands for. One story, one name, one second chance at a time.